Well, the former vice president has told the BBC she might run for president again. In her first UK interview, Harris said she would, quote, possibly be president one day and express confidence that a woman will lead the U.S. in the future. Speaking more brutally than before, Harris signaled she would consider another presidential run in 2028, despite poor polling that puts her as an outsider for the Democratic nomination. She dismissed those numbers, noting she's never been guided by polls in her career. What do you think? Should Kamala Harris run again? 713-440-8870. Folks in this room with me, what do you think?
I would like to see her run again, although I don't think she would win. I think so.
Polls are on your side.
I'm not saying she would be the Democratic candidate. I'm just saying she could run again and go to debates with everybody else and have what should have happened in the first place, have a true campaign and a true primary system for the Democratic Party to determine who the nominee should be, not just by being given it, which is what happened and which is what teed a lot of people off.
What do you think?
I think that just based on her qualifications and her resume, I think that she would be a solid candidate. But I think that also what we've learned is that that's not what always gets you.
And she could be a distraction. You know,
she could also be a
she could certainly get the cameras and the press. There's no question.
My take on this is that women, unfortunately, do not get to play by the same rules that men do. And then you take it even a step further, that women of color do not get to play by the same rules of pretty much anybody else in this country, I think. Mm-hmm. And I know that that is a controversial statement, and I understand that, but I do think that, and even going in deeper into politics, they are measured by a separate standard. I think Kamala Harris has always been measured by a different standard and has had to navigate very difficult waters. I think just if you took names out and if you took out genders and you started putting resumes back to back, there would be a lot of women, I think, that would come out in ways that you would have never thought.
Well, and that may be the more reason for her to run again, to say it is hard for a woman of color in this country to run anything, to rise to the top of anything. And so therefore it's up to me to show that it can be done.
Yes,
and give
the fact that she was our vice president speaks volumes.
Yeah. Well, we had a black president.
And we had a black president. And I do think that, but based on her history and looking at the political landscape that we're in right now, looking at it just from a Democratic strategy, do I think that she would be a candidate that could actually come out on top? No.
I think that I think that the Democrat, from purely a logistics point of view and what you should do after Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, I have a funny feeling the Democrats are not going to put a female candidate out there, good, bad, or indifferent. Yeah. But I think if you're looking at how these things have been playing out, because I think they're going to look for what can be the best bet to get back into the White House, regardless of, I don't think you're going to see a Democratic ticket this time that's going to have diversity in it. I think that they are going to try and see what they can do. They feel like maybe they have.
And Pete Buttigieg would be an amazing.
And I don't think because of that, I don't think he'll get in there.
Absolutely. And
I think
again,
you may
I think
see what were you going to say?
No, just going back, even somebody like Pete Buttigieg, right? There are so many social criterias that we measure candidates on today. You know, if you look at Abraham Lincoln, a lot of people say he was not very good looking. He was kind of awkward. You look back in history, and these elected officials were elected based on their impact, their, what they've been able to do, and less about the social constraints around them. And now it's become much more of a entertainment popularity
I'll put
contest.
My prediction out there. I think that the presidential ticket on the Democratic side at the next race is going to be Newsom for president and Shapiro for VP.
Who for president?
Gavin Newsom.
I think that'd make a great ticket.
Yeah,
interesting.
And Shapiro for vice president.
That's an interesting.
I think
we did get
a
couple of YouTube comments. I'm just going to say, Wine Goddess Texas just says, agreed, Celeste. Thank you. I had to.
We do have a call.
I don't know what you're agreeing to, but she's happy with that.
I'm going to read the all of it. I just like it, yes.
We have a call on the Kamala subject from Jonathan in Cyprus. Jonathan, what's your take on the Kamala run?
Hey, good morning, guys. I don't think Mrs. Harris should run again. She couldn't beat Donald Trump. And to be honest, I think it's time that the Democrats do a proper primary and let the voters decide instead of handpicking candidates and pushing them forward. Make it truly democratic, see who comes out, and if it ends up being Ms. Harris, great. If it doesn't, hey, at least the voters got a fair chance at this is who we want representing the Democrat ticket. Period. They need to try that.
You mean make America again, like I've been saying?
I think Jonathan has an excellent point in that I think a lot of people felt that they didn't necessarily pick her.
Oh,
she was picked.
Tom from the Heights is on the line also concerning Kamala. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, I second the notion from the other caller, and I'd like to add that I don't think the Democrats have really been specialists at paying attention to demographics and polling in ways that could be enormously advantageous. I feel like Bernie Sanders and the Mamdani people and the organization he's building in New York are emblematic of candidates who are finally listening to an electorate that polls, polls very heavily to the left on most of the issues that we discuss every day. I'm 60 years old, and I've seen the Democrats kind of ignore polling and demographic evidence to their peril, to the point of course, the Trumpism that surrounds us today. But
I can't even point to who the leader of the Democratic Party is right now.
Yeah. It's I think Gavin Newsom
I was going to say nationally,
pushed himself
I would say
out to the forefront.
Well, he has started doing a lot of AI and posting on social media,
and
he's getting the attention,
showing that he can be nasty also.
Yeah,
or
funny. A lot of people,
it is more funny than
Republican
nasty.
Supporters and a lot of people that support President Trump have said that they don't see anything wrong with that people are too serious and people need to. So I think that Gavin Newsom is taking a
I think
page out of the book.
There is also this whole idea that Kamala, once again, good, bad, or indifferent, harkens back to the past. All of that, there's time for a new wave of Democrats.
Yes.
And there has to be a reinventing of the party. They have been failing on something. Now, you can argue they've done really well with popular vote up until this last presidential election where they didn't get the popular vote, but they did before that. So there is still belief in the country behind the party, but it hasn't been focused. There hasn't been the excitement they need. There hasn't. And so new faces. Kamala is tied to the past. That's what I worry.
Yes, new faces. And also more common sense. I think that we have to go back to some basic common sense and look at local elected officials. And I say local, but I look more at a statewide and see who is really making inroads within their state and making change, or at least maintaining during this, administration or prior administrations, their ethos within their state and their constituents.
Well, and I've read a lot about that it's not just the national parties. It's your local school board and your city council and your commissioners, and who are they? Because that's where things can really take over your life. Mm-hmm. It might be a national issue you're worried about, but that'll sort itself out without much influence over you necessarily. But your local stuff, that's where you really have to look at those candidates and decide who has my best interest at heart.
Right.
I want to remind everyone that early voting is underway currently in the state of Texas, and you can go and vote on November 4th is election night. We'll be having live special coverage starting at 8 p.m. for an hour right here on News 88.7. We hope you'll join us for that, where we'll be talking about how our current races are turning out. But everyone, remember to go and vote.
All right, Colby's on the line from Katy to talk about the Kamala Harris situation. Welcome to Hello Houston, Colby. What's up?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Regarding the Kamala Harris situation, she just wasn't as electable as many of us thought she would be. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of y'all made a lot of good points regarding Gavin Newsom. He's kind of fighting fire with fire, which is entertaining to say the least. I think I have a suggestion for, if not president, then maybe Texas governor. I think Mark Cuban would be a fantastic candidate. He's altruistic. He has the name recognition. He's got the funds. I think he could do it.
Let the Dems bring in their
Interesting.
own billionaire to run.
Yeah. Mark Cuban.
That's an interesting call.
That is.
Thank you,
I
Colby,
haven't
for
really
that.
heard
And he's
Mark
from
Cuban.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
That's where he's
that's
born. So, I mean, he
Sweet
could help carry that Pennsylvania
and
state,
Texas.
Yeah, again, 713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston. You can join at any moment. Again, 713-440-8870.
Gary is on the line from the Heights. Gary, your turn.
Regarding Kamala Harris's possible run one more time, it brings to mind fairly recent history of Richard Nixon as vice president failed to win the election against John F. Kennedy. Then he ran again and won. So it's not impossible that Kamala Harris could be a viable candidate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But do you think, though, that in today's environment that it reflects too much of past administration, the past of the Democratic Party, and it's time for the Democratic Party to come out reborn and refreshed?
Well, I don't think Kamala is damaged goods. I think that a lot of her concepts that she promoted are being trashed by Trump, and people will realize that moving back into a more realistic outlook on governance could easily propel Kamala into the White House.
Gary, good points. Thank you for sharing with us at 713-440-8870.
So this is, just tell me what you think. This may be a little off kilter here. But 2014, Republicans, a lot of them lost on the whole gay marriage issue. And they really hated the question because everyone would say, how do you feel about gay marriage? And as the Republican Party, they did not support it. Well, a lot of people, that momentum had started. Biden had come out for it. Obama had come out for it. A lot of people were like, well, let people get married. If, it's not going to hurt you. Just let them get married. And that's what happened. But people said that the Republicans were almost breathing a sigh of relief, at least that we don't have to answer that question anymore because it's killing us. It's killing us at the polls. But now they flipped the script, and it's like, look at that. Look at these LGBTQ people. They've come into a little bit of power on their own, and they want to make the whole country like they are. And that's why you can't vote for a Democrat, because they support LGBTQ. It's very clever, worked. But it's so far removed from what the whole point was. The whole point was just about being equal. If marriage is enough for you and you get the tax benefits and the federal benefits, and there are 238 of them, if you get all those benefits, why don't I?
And I also think there was a lot of issues during that time where people wanted to be with their partner during their final days if they were in a hospital.
And they couldn't
Rights.
necessarily.
There are certain rights that you have as a family member or as a spouse
Correct.
that you were not being given. And there were people that had their loved ones and their partners for a very long time and were not given the right to be with them.
And that was
weren't
very
married.
prevalent during the AIDS crisis.
Correct.
When young men were in the hospital at age 30 dying and had no one with them.
Right.
Because their partners weren't allowed and their parents didn't want to have to do with them.
And so I think that one of the solutions was to give the right that if you had been with your partner for many, many years, nobody could essentially argue and say, no, they should not be together for their final moments.
Right. To move it up into what we were talking about with Kamala and the elections currently, Wine Goddess Texas points out on YouTube the old line, it's the economy, stupid. Really doesn't matter what your policies are, some will argue, what's happening in your pocketbook.
I think
what's happening
they've
in your
gone with
wallet.
economy and fear.
Yeah.
And fear is that makes you vulnerable, and that's when you vote for anyone that can take the fear away. And I think that's why Trump won. He struck enough fear into people that if you stuck with Kamala, you were really going to be going downhill. In so many ways.
713-440-8870. Betty is on the line from Lake Jackson. Hello, Betty. What's on your mind?
Kamala Harris should not run for president again.
Why?
If she does, the Democrat Party will lose once again. She's an intelligent woman. She makes very good points, but you've got to have someone who can fight fire with fire. And I do not mean the hatred that Trump and J.D. Vance have. I mean fire in the belly, passion, the kind of passion that Bernie Sanders has. You've got to have someone who is a good orator, who can make people sit up and listen. She does not have that. In fact, in the prior election, she would downplay the audience on things because she wanted to laugh and smile and be a good person. And I feel like she is a good person. But you cannot combat the kind of hatred that Trump and J.D. Vance have.
Betty, let me jump in here and just ask you, looking at the current landscape or the perspective landscape coming, who would you think is the next person that should be on the ticket? Because I know you like Bernie, but Bernie, we know he's up there in age, so who would you look at next?
Oh, no, yeah, Bernie cannot run either, but what I'm saying is Bernie's type of passion and fire in the belly.
So who do you see out there that carries that?
I don't know that I see anyone that carries it.
Yeah, I think that's a real...
But Gavin Newsom at least has some name recognition.
Mm-hmm. And, well, you know what they always say. We're still, believe it or not, 3 years out before that election takes place. And there's a lot that's going to change and happen and shift. But
Betty, thank you for
it's always
calling.
interesting at this point to be looking and starting to speculate. So thank you, Betty.
And we also did a YouTube poll where you can go onto YouTube and vote. And out of 17, we had 17 votes. Should Kamala Harris run for president again? 82% said no.
Yeah, I fear that in the position we're in right now, different than the time with Nixon, that it's been so much of a sense of losing on the Democratic side, even if it may not mathematically turn out to be that, but it has the appearance of that, that anything that harkens to what has happened in the past needs to be moved away from, and that you have to find something to make the Democratic Party look like it's moving forward.
And, you know, I have to say, I'm going to go even as far as I think there are a lot of Republicans who are also looking at what is next regarding for the party and who is going to be their kind of next person, because
you're not paying attention. Trump's running again.
That's right, right.
Insinuating
but really, I mean, I
regardless
think
of
there
law.
are some conversations around really looking at President Trump, regardless if you like him or not. He's charismatic. He has what a lot of people consider the it factor. He was able to run on a lot. He has that gravitas essentially, and it's going to be interesting to see who's going to come out of the
I would like to know more about
Party.
the MRI that he had. I've had about 5 or 6 MRIs, and they're always for a very good reason.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they've been a negative outcome. I'm just saying they don't give you an MRI unless you have a very good reason to have one.
Well, the president told us it was the best. He had the best MRI.
The best MRI he's
Did
ever.
he?
No, Ernie, I've had the best MRI anyone could ever have.
Well,
Mine was a Tesla. Mine was a Tesla machine.
Oh, there we go. Other suggestions out there. What about James Tallarico? Well, let's first see if he can win Senate before you put him up for president. Andy Beshear is also being tossed out in our chat group.
Yeah, head of Kentucky.
Yeah,
That's right.
People are saying both parties need to find new blood. I think we can all agree on that.